everyone to Come Testify. Thank you for joining us today. It's wonderful to have you with us once again. And this is the program where people come and share their life stories and their testimonies, and they tell us about what God is doing in their lives and the goodness of the Lord. So today my guest is Mako. He will be doing just that. Welcome, Mako, to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's great to have you with us. Thank you for making the time.
No, thank you for having me.
So, Mako, before we start, I just want you to connect with the audience. So,
Okay, sure.
Please tell us, who is Mako? Tell us your full name and your background, whatever it is that you want people to know about you. Then we'll move on to your testimony.
Sure.
Yeah.
My name is Mako Kadziyanike. Quite a mouthful. And I am 25, 26 in a little bit. And I am a son. I am a friend to others. And that's me. I just enjoy life.
Wonderful. Thank you. And so now we want to find out about your story. I know you've got different facets you want to share with us. Your testimony, we can't wait to hear. So over to you, and you tell us about your life.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, like I said, my name is Mako, and just meaning, blessings. And I think that's just, I'd never really thought about it until not too long ago when we were talking to, so one of the things that I do is that I work with the youth from our church.
Okay.
And we're going over things like the importance of names and the like. And, it hadn't hit me as much, just like how much your name has a meaning in how you interact with people, in how people interact with you, and just who you are as a person. And I think that's just a good place to start, that like, I just genuinely believe that life is a journey, right? And you're constantly learning as you're going about it. And there are things that you have gotten used to the whole time, like just in your entire life.
Yeah.
And yet they only become real, if that makes sense, along the way on your journey.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And that's just how I feel about life. And maybe just to start off, just in terms of me, so I've lived with my mom and my dad. And I've got two siblings, so it's three of us, so three boys.
Are they older?
They're both younger than me, so I'm the firstborn.
Okay.
So we have a running joke at home that I'm the deputy parent.
Deputy parent?
Yeah, that I'm the deputy parent, and so that's sort of been me. We've been, with 3 years. So I'm 3 years apart from the one after me, and after him it's also 3 years.
3 years. Okay.
So we always have this like little joke that we make that like, you guys planned this too well, because he was born on the 6th of. So I was born 28th of September. The other one is 6th of March, the other one is 17 June. So if you take the years, it's 3 years, 3 years, 3 months, 3 months, and then 11 days as well.
That's amazing. I'm sure that was a coincidence.
It really was, because we're like, you guys, they're like,
Did
nah.
you plan this? Yeah.
And then I was born on a Monday, the other on a Tuesday, and the last one on a Thursday, like, you missed it.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Exactly. But I think that all to say, I think God is very intentional about how he plans out your life.
Yeah.
And whether if you see it or not, sometimes we choke things down to coincidence. But I don't believe in coincidence as much anymore. And I don't think there's coincidence. I think everything God plans out.
Yeah.
And our journey is planned out by God.
Yeah.
So sort of growing up, grew up the three of us as in like the boys. And with my parents. And my parents are, my dad's a pastor. Well, he's now a bishop.
Oh, wow.
It's weird to hear that out loud, because he's still just pastor.
Pasta.
It's very much pasta.
So what does that make your mom? If it's like, she's a pastor.
No, so she's Mako Kadziyanike.
Okay.
But I guess obviously they pass it together.
Yeah.
So they do the roles together for sure.
Okay.
And it's very interesting having grown up in that sort of environment where when we grow up, when we were growing up, it was very much you'd the whole day whatever, and then in the evening we'd had what we call quiet time. Okay. Where it was typically my dad. My mom would do it if she had to.
Okay.
And not that she didn't like to, but I think she was just very tired.
Yeah.
So my dad would typically come back from work, and him being in corporate and all of that, he would come back sort of like 6 p.m. 7 p.m. type of time, and our quiet time was 7:30, because our bedtime was 8 o'clock typically. So during quiet time would sing one or two songs, typically I guess songs that he would sing. So I'm trying to think of one now off the top of my head.
I'm sure you can't forget them. something in there somewhere.
Yeah, but I'm sure if I was to actually think about it, it'll
Yeah,
come.
yeah.
But things like My Bible and I
remember
those
that.
those kind of songs.
Those sort of scripture union kind of songs.
Exactly, yeah. So
yeah.
he would sing those with us, and then he would read a passage of scripture or a story. So I think initially we'd read like from Bible stories, then
yeah.
we get into actually like reading the Bible itself.
Okay.
And then he would ask you, what did you learn? And I remember he'd then say, so what did you learn? And when you're very sleepy, you're like, Dad. And he goes, no, we're reading again. You're like, no, not
Are you
yet.
serious?
But looking back, I think that really set the foundation
Yeah.
for me having an understanding and appreciation for quiet time and
Yeah.
for the word and the things of God. And, we used to go to Epworth for church.
Okay.
So we lived in Bordeaux West.
And you'd
we'd
cross
go to
town.
We would cross town for
Yeah.
church. So from the point I was born up until I think I was about 10, we'd be going to Epworth for church.
Oh, really?
And I think that really helped me see Christianity from a different light altogether. Where I think different to a lot of people because one, I was a pastor's child, but also going to Epworth for church. So I went to Bordeaux Primary for a junior school. And interestingly, similar to someone who was also on this episode, it was very much a school where you'd be going to school people who were professionals, entrepreneurs, like their children, but also like you'd be going with the different workers as well as children as well. So people were from different backgrounds, and that in itself wasn't too difficult because then going to Epworth and seeing Christianity from that perspective was also very different. So as much as Bordeaux was a government school, it was a Christian school, and you then
That's
find that the walk that you would see people live this side and in Epworth is very different. In Epworth, you're seeing people. I remember seeing someone manifest, and I was like, oh my gosh.
That was the first time.
And I was a child, and I was like, oh, what is going on?
That must have been scary, hey?
But
I think.
it wasn't necessarily because I was just
necessarily.
like, oh wow.
What's that? You were
And you'd ask,
fascinated.
and my dad would
Yeah.
answer like entirely, and you're like, okay, fine, interesting. Then we typically wouldn't finish church and go home because Epworth is so
the
far
pastor has
away.
to hang around as
Exactly.
well.
So you'd hang around, but you'd actually go visit people's homes.
That was a good thing, I
Yeah.
think.
So
yeah.
I mean, I remember, in Epworth, so like Dombo Ramwari and the Overspill and those different places,
Yeah.
and you'd see like what they call jigure. I don't know what the English word is.
I'm trying to think how...
It's like because it's like a cultural religious thing,
Yeah.
typically found in Malawi, but it's very much present here
In
in
Zimbabwe
Zim.
as well, yeah.
Yeah, and you'd see them in the streets, and I'd be looking like, oh my gosh, this is scary. But what is it? And then
Yeah.
seeing that side of life and understanding that there's a spiritual element to
Yeah.
everything from a young age.
Yeah.
Because I think if I hadn't seen that, I'll just think, oh yeah, God and fairy,
Everything is
amazing.
yeah,
and,
yeah.
But like there was this very real side
Side
to
to
life
life,
where I'm thinking one of my closest friends in Epworth is telling me they can't afford school fees, and I'm like, what school fees? And I guess that's from a position of privilege,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Because
so.
I just knew that I'd go to school
And come home.
and
yeah.
go home and watch DSTV and play outside with my brothers, and that was it. But it then helped me understand that in life there are different journeys and there are highs and lows in every journey. And I guess that built a lot of my Christian walk, that when I then got to we then moved to the church in town because so we go to Faith Ministries and they have different congregations. So he then became pastor of the one in town, and that's where I then saw like someone who was manifesting. I remember they were praying for, it was my dad and a couple other pastors praying for this person, and this I think it was very physical because they came out like, I think top 2 buttons had been ripped off.
Oh my gosh.
But if you saw the person they were praying for, they were so small.
So, yeah.
But that then also again helped me understand that, okay, this Christian walk, as much as, and I remember going to youth on Fridays, and you then understand that it's my personal journey.
Yeah.
So I've seen people go through these different journeys. I've seen my dad do this. I've seen my mom do this. I've seen all of this. And I realized that I have to make a decision for myself.
For yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of my friends got baptized, Form 1, Form 2, Form 3. And I was like, I'm not ready.
But you
And
were born again?
I was born
You were-
again.
okay.
But I was like, I'm not ready.
Okay.
And my parents
Yeah.
were like, okay, cool.
When you're
There was
ready.
no pressure or anything. So I got to walk my Christian journey for myself. And I remember going through high school, and youth actually became this cool thing. And in high school, there's a slang that we reverse English, right? And you'd say "thui." That was the word for youth.
Oh, really?
It was called
yeah, I remember
thui.
there's a time when everything was said backwards.
Exactly.
Thui.
Yeah,
Okay.
"thui." That was the
Okay,
word
I haven't
for
heard of
youth.
that one.
And
Yeah.
we actually would be like, guys, are you going to youth? And you have people who wouldn't profess Christianity, but they'll be like, okay, what time is it? And it actually became like a thing of people were going, and that was very interesting in itself. That our youth group also went on this journey from being. I remember at some point there was a lull for like a year, and you could be like at youth and you're like 10. or like 7 on a Friday. And then now when I left in upper 6, you could be like over 100. And it was also just very interesting to see that sort of thing that God works in different seasons.
Yes.
But in each season, you need to be resolute in yourself. And I remember being informed to and saying to my dad, it was my first time ever having, I guess, what some call a dry spell, I suppose, where I'm trying to read, but nothing is entering. I'm trying to pray, but I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall. And I was like, Dad, what does this mean? And he says, oh no, that, it's kind of considered like a dry spell, but just keep pushing. And that's sort of like where I then realized, okay, fine, everyone goes through their own journey and their own process, and the thing is just to keep pushing. So even just like the youth group, where it was like low and gets into these highs, that's like life for everyone, right?
And it sort of mirrors what actually happens in real life.
Exactly.
Yeah, because life is not all
it's not
up
all
there
highs,
or all low. It's like a wave.
It's and it's not even constant either. It's constantly up and down. So I think that's something that I learned pretty early on. Then I think December 2015, I decided to rededicate my life, because I think I felt like I had a full-on understanding of what it meant to be Christian. I'd grown up being in a Christian household with Christian beliefs and values, and in high school, we didn't like do mass or anything, but in assembly you'd read, the word would be read, and you'd pray and stuff. But it wasn't, I couldn't say like, but I would go to Impact, just kind of like scripture union, and you're like, okay, fine, you're growing. But I don't think I could possibly say that. Like, I was like, yeah, this is my Christian, So I rededicated my life. I gave my life to God.
But I guess in the background, those things were kind of like impacting your spirit over the years.
100%.
They were influencing you.
Oh, 100%.
And that's an amazing thing to even have that support from your parents.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has that from such a young age. That was amazing.
And I think especially being like a pastor's child, because everyone is sort of expecting something from you. And the nice thing is that my parents are always like, live your own life. Like, don't
conform
for people's
to
expectations. Exactly.
But also another interesting thing though is that people always say that the pastor's kids are the naughtiest.
Exactly.
I'm sure you've
I've heard of it.
Some have that expectation.
Yeah.
Didn't that ever come your way? Like for
people can be like, you're not like the others. And I'm like, what are the others like? Who are they? Because the interesting thing is, and I don't know, like I said, God forms everything for a reason. Yeah. In like sort of like my closest friends, all their parents, if they were not pastors, were elders.
Oh wow.
Barring one, especially like barring one or two, but like majority of them, their parents were pastors or elders, and I was like, that's just really strange. But it was also like, kanamchitam scans, or if you're being naughty, it's like
bound to be seen somewhere by
someone. This joke that one of our friends' moms, Anzi, guys, we can do this everywhere else, but we can't do this at their house, because the mom will see. They'll be seen they'll see a vision or whatever.
Oh my gosh! They've got this gift. They'll know there's something.
They've got prophetic gifting. So everyone was like, my Ningi will see that,
Yeah.
But I guess that was again part of the whole journey, that then realizing as you grow older that you're not doing it to perform or for the sake of someone else will see. You're doing it for your own relationship with God. And in university, in high school, just sort of like the last thing about that is like, there's one, you go to youth every Friday or whatever, but there's one lesson that really stuck. There's a pastor called Pastor Gui. I don't know if you know Gui Mabika. Yeah. So he was our youth pastor, and he said he once preached a sermon, and this is something that stuck with me since. He said that my name is Gwinyai with a Y, and the Y in life matters. What he said the rest of the sermon, I've got no idea. Well, you ask me for many of the other sermons, I cannot really tell you. But that stuck with me, because then getting into university, I took a gap year.
Is this around 2015 when you're saying you rededicated your life? No?
2015 I rededicated. 2016 I then got baptized.
Okay.
I then made a decision for myself, January 2016. I remember it was the last, I can't remember the exact date, but it was the last Sunday of that month. And I remember, it was good. I felt, like I was ready, and I remember being walked through what exactly it all was, and it was good. And then 2016 was also the year about the why matters.
The why matters.
Yeah. The why in what you do in life matters.
It matters.
Yeah.
That sounds very interesting.
And that really just carried me, because then I took a gap year after upper 6, which was in 2017. 2017 when I took my gap year, and I was trying to figure out what to do next. I knew I always wanted to be involved in business, and that's how I was always, wired, but I didn't know where I wanted to study. I applied to Canada, and every time I'd want to apply, applications are closed, or the card wouldn't work, or it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. And, but I remember just God I believe that he just orchestrates everything for a reason.
He does. He definitely does.
Because then during my gap year, I started working and did many different roles, and, But one thing that, again, during that year is that I then got to grow from being a youth to being like a young adult in a
adults,
way.
yeah.
And I don't think if I didn't have that gap year, I wouldn't have grown as much as I did. And from a Christian perspective, when I then got to university, a lot of the lessons that I learned in the earlier years, things like quiet time, all those things, it's stuff that I then practiced subconsciously, but they then became a conscious part of life. Because
Yeah.
when I got to uni, I was like, if I don't do this with God, I will get
You just
lost.
be derailed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that sort of was me with my walk with God. And
So you had a strong foundation, because that's what really, the things that you did in your earlier years are the ones that really saw you through the later years. I would say.
100%. Because
Yeah.
I'd say, like, even getting to university, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, you talk to someone and someone's like, okay, fine. What's like the craziest thing you've done? And I'm like, And it's not like, and again, it's not to say like I was at church every day and,
Yeah.
but it's just to then say that I think then hearing people talk about, oh yeah, we're doing these drugs and this, or rather we're doing these drugs and we're going to do this. And for me, it was like, oh yeah, that's not something I do as Mako.
Yeah.
And not so much because
Yeah.
my parents said,
It's
but
just your value
it then
system.
became part of my value
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
And I think I was still growing in the faith. And I still am, but I was pretty early on in terms of like, fully understanding certain
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
But there were certain things that I just had said for myself, as for me and my household, as the saying goes, I do and I don't do. And
That's good. So you're a person
yeah.
of conviction pretty young. Because
Yeah.
some people are not even like that when they're much older. So
Yeah,
that
no, I
is,
think it's because I think I got that from my parents.
Okay.
My parents, if they
Kudos
believe
to
something,
them.
they full on believe it.
That's good.
And if they
That's
don't,
good.
they don't. And you're not
Yeah.
going to meet them in the middle ground.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So
Yeah.
I learned that early on, that in life, you stand for what you believe in. And it has to be backed by the word.
I think that's
And,
amazing
yeah.
in this day and age, especially for the youth, because some are tossed. If someone says, "Let's do this," let's do
Yeah.
that. But if you know where you stand,
Yeah.
and it's your faith that anchors you, I
100,
think
yeah.
it's amazing that worked for you.
Yeah.
And that works. Yeah.
So that's sort of been up to that point, and then I had to do a foundation year the university that I went to. I had to do a foundation year
Okay.
because my results were good enough to get into other universities, but I specifically wanted that one because I got places in South Africa and I was in Malaysia for university.
Oh, you're in Malaysia.
Yeah.
That's quite unique.
Exactly. So I
Okay.
didn't know much about Malaysia before
Okay.
going.
Okay.
I have to say that.
It's,
I was just like,
where's that?
Andy, like, let's go. I knew where it was because my aunt had been before, and I'm a huge Formula One fan. Massive.
Oh,
so they
are
used
you?
to race in
Oh, they
Malaysia.
did? Okay.
Yeah, and Singapore, which is next door.
Okay.
So I just knew it's in Southeast Asia. It's, by the equator. It's always
Like,
hot.
so hot.
Yeah, and that's about what I
about
knew.
you,
And I knew
yeah.
it was a Muslim country.
Okay,
That's
so
what I
that
knew.
must have been an interesting
Exactly.
side to
It
things.
was. So now I was
Yeah.
looking for like people who went to the same church that I went to, who had been to Malaysia,
Yeah.
and I found a few, and we spoke briefly, but I didn't get enough.
Okay.
So I was like, oh my gosh, I won't be able to profess Christ. I won't be able to wear my. I was like, what about
Oh,
my
you'll be
Christian
persecuted.
T-shirt? Or oh my gosh.
Yeah, so-
But upon arriving. And I did a bit of research before for churches and stuff in the area. But upon arriving, I realized, okay, fine, yes, it's a Muslim country, but like a lot of people there, people who practice Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, people who
Christianity.
practice Christianity.
Really?
In fact, there's a strong Christian community
wow.
there, and I
Wow.
was quite surprised. And people, you actually can practice your own religion while
Openly.
you're there. Yeah, you can.
Unlike some countries, it's like you'll be in trouble kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I think the only thing, obviously, with Malaysia is that everyone except for people who are Malay can be Christian.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, I see.
Because
I
if
see.
you're born Muslim,
Yeah.
according to Islam, you can't change religions.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Unless
'cause
maybe you
if you
leave the
do,
country or something.
Yeah, a lot of people
So-
do that,
that.
but it's one of those things where so you could share Christ with everyone else except for.
Well, that's
yeah.
a certain level of liberty,
Exactly.
I would say, compared to some countries.
100%. So I think for me, again, because that God again orchestrating, like why I say it's called kind of like the journey, right? Is because I get there and I go to uni so that they can process some of my visa things. So you get what you call a one-time entry, but they need to process your visa full on there.
Okay.
And I get to the school office and they say I got there a week early, and they say to me, oh, there's a Zimbabwean girl who's here. We told her that you're here. She lives in the same res that you're living in.
Oh,
and I was like, oh,
what a
really?
coincidence.
Okay, cool. And I get to the res and they're like, oh, you're Zimbabwean. There's a girl. I'm like, okay. then they gave her my number. And then I get, hello, yes, Sha. And I'm like, this is a Malaysian. Like, who is this?
this?
I'm like, it's like Mako. And I'm like, yeah, Sha, Sakandri downstairs. And I'm like, and she's talking in Shona, and she sounds,
Okay.
and I'm like, who
Who's
is
this?
this? And you know, but she became like my older sister.
Oh, wow.
She
That was
took me
good.
to the church that I then went to full time.
Oh, wow.
Amazing church. It's called Joho Church of Praise.
Okay.
Joho Baru. Amazing people.
That was wonderful.
Yeah, and one of the people who really walked with me, her name was Christina. She actually has been to Zambia before because she had a Zambian friend. And,
Okay.
but again, the whole journey is that in uni, no matter what happened, I had this one rule for myself that no matter what happened, where you were, whatever happened, Sunday. I went on Saturday because I preferred the Saturday service in the evening. We're at church.
Okay.
And if we couldn't go Saturday, Sunday morning we're at church.
Okay.
But again, was that whole thing that at home I'd grown up knowing that we go to church, and not so much out of religiously, but no matter what you're going through in life, you may pick up something that day. And again, it then had me in moments in uni where like you may be in trouble, in, you know, compromising situations.
Yeah.
That's where I'd ask myself, the why matters. Why am I doing this? And again, that whole conviction thing. So when I then came back to Zim, I took I had a bit of a break between foundation and the actual degree itself. And that particular juncture, I worked with Pastor Gui and this guy called Angoni Chinara and his wife Chiedza. They had a media company called Crafted Media Guys.
Okay.
And we did a whole lot of work, but the thing that I took most out of that period is shout out to Pastor Gui. He really took me under his wings.
Wow.
Because what he did, I arrived and I was chilling at home for like a week, and he called and goes, he says, Chikomana. So he goes, Chikomana, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm playing FIFA. And he goes, no, I mean like, while you're around, what's your plan? And I was like, I'm just chilling. He goes, I'm coming to pick you up tomorrow. We're going to work. And I'm like, okay. So he had just become the pastor at the Faith Ministries in Avondale Center Church. And so in the mornings, would spend the whole morning there. And then in the afternoon or late morning into the afternoon, spend at Crafted Media. But that period really sort of like, I'd ask questions, would engage, but I got to understand what it means to be relational. And I think they have this saying at Center where they say they've got a decree they make, and they say communities cover.
That's nice. Community is cover.
Community is cover, and connection is culture. And I forgot that the C's, 3 C's. Community is cover, connection is culture, Christ is center.
Okay.
And those things really then became a part of who I am today in my Christian walk. And I realized that to get through to other Christians as we share and as we minister, we need to have our identity rooted in Christ. When it's rooted in Christ, part of one of the things we're called to be fishers of men, but you can't do that without creating relationship with people.
No, you can't.
And now this is not me just kind of being this person, but I'd like to believe that how I live my life is I like to create relationship with everyone I'm with. And I always say that I believe in sharing who God is and what he's doing with us in our lives. So as a result, COVID happened. When COVID happened, I was in Malaysia. I went through this period.
Oh, you were in Malaysia?
I was in Malaysia during COVID. So I'd actually been following, on YouTube popped up this one, what do you call doctors? Who specialize in viruses, diseases, and stuff like that. I'm forgetting the name.
Not a virologist, no?
No. They're called, I'm forgetting the name, but that's what he specializes in. And so he popped up in end of November.
Which
on
year?
My YouTube.
During COVID?
2019.
2019.
Before COVID.
Just before COVID.
Yeah, and he popped up and it's like, oh, there's this disease that looks like it's happening in China. And I was like, okay.
That's in China.
Yeah, but I watched it, I was interested. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Dope. You know, that's cool. And then we continue, and every other day he's sharing updates. So COVID is growing in China and he's sharing about it. And I'm like,
It's
okay,
spreading.
China's not too far from Malaysia, right?
Oh, right. You're
Exactly.
in Malaysia.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. So we then get to December and he says, okay, it actually seems like there's a super spreader virus that took place, and this event took place in people where there's this Chinese holiday where people go back to like their rural home or their hometown and city, and then they go back again to wherever they're working and living. And that apparently was called a super spreader. So I was like, oh, okay, this COVID thing seems pretty serious. And all that to say, when it then came crunch time when we had our first case in Malaysia, I was like, oh my gosh. But I was also then reminded, like, you know, do not worry, and all the words that God speaks in his word came to life. Exactly. And at that time I was doing this thing where I'd read a proverb a day.
Okay.
I think for a year I did that.
Oh, wow.
Where the first I'd read Proverbs 1, Proverbs 2. Then in a month where there were 30 days, I'd read like 2 on a given, like, probably on like the 30th, I'd read 30
to
and
cover
31.
Proverbs 31.
Exactly.
Okay.
But I saw that I also kind of grew in how I would think and process life. And that in itself, in that moment, then, I was then like to my dad, look, Dad, I think I should come back home because of this COVID thing. He goes,
Were you a bit
I've spoken
scared?
to doctors. I was, so reading Proverbs, you then understand that no, but God is God, right?
God, yeah.
And all that we think in our plans may, you know, in the word it speaks about how man may have his plans, but ultimately the Lord's plan prevails, right?
That's true.
And the Lord's will prevails. And that then really stuck with me because even during that time I was worried and anxious, but I was like, no, but God has got me through this situation, whatever it is. So I told my dad, I think I should come back. They're locking down the country in like 2 days. And he goes, no, you know, some doctors are saying it's just going to be 3 weeks, a month, so we'll be okay. And I was like, oh, okay. But Dad, I've been following this guy for months. He's saying it's serious.
It's serious, and you're near there.
Yeah, and I think during COVID itself, I do think that like, I don't know because I wasn't diagnosed, but I think I sort of get depressive sort of state because my housemate then left after a month because they were allowed to do inter-provincial travel. But you've got people saying, when are you guys going home? You're like, because other countries are taking people home.
Oh, and you're still
there.
there.
And we're still there.
Yeah.
So it was myself, a Sudanese friend, and another Zimbabwean friend.
So the people from Africa.
People from Africa we're all still, you know, back in.
Yeah.
But it was quite interesting because through that I then also saw God, right? Like I was saying, in community where we were now just the three of us who were, because we were in the same apartment building, so we were allowed to, you know, to move around in that building. So that again, I saw myself grow in my walk with God because I'm facing this difficult thing where I'm feeling very much alone and it was difficult, but the whole community's cover, right? In those moments when you guys are together, you wouldn't even think of it. But it's interesting to hear this Sudanese friend share her testimony because she then said to me, so I didn't know. But it was one day when we're talking and, you know, our sleep schedules were upside down. We were waking up at like 6 p.m. and going to bed at 6 a.m. And we were essentially literally living life the other way around. And for me, it made sense because all my Zimbabwean friends were up during those hours. So we were just up together. And, you know, I can just say that I think God brought us together as in the three of us because she then opened up one night and says, I need to take my antidepressants. We're like, what? And she's like, yeah, no, like she was taking antidepressants, she was, you know, on medication and stuff. But it was very interesting to hear how she then shared towards the end of the initial lockdown that God saw her through her journey because she was saying that she no longer takes any, she was no longer seeing the psychiatrist anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now she was seeing the psychologist less often. And the psychologist said, what's changed in your life? Sorry, the psychiatrist. And she says, oh, nothing. It's like, yeah, but COVID people have gotten worse. What's going on? And she goes, oh, no, like, she's like, tell me your routine. And she says, oh, yeah, no, I chill every evening with these two Zimbabwean guy friends of mine. And we just chill and just talk. And we just discuss different things. And he says, I think that's
the game changer.
Yeah. And I think that's what I learned again, that in the journey of life, you need to walk life with people.
Yes.
You can't do life without people.
In isolation.
Exactly. Yeah. And you only go so far without. And it doesn't mean you have to have 10,000 friends, but you need to have
it's more about quality, hey?
Exactly.
Not quantity.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I then came back, I was supposed to move to the Malaysian campus. I mean, the UK campus because of the University of Reading.
Okay.
And they have a UK campus. I was doing real estate. And I was supposed to move there. But things just didn't work out visa-wise. I think at the time it was quite complicated and things were taking time. Yeah. So it didn't work out. And sorry.
It's okay.
Let me just cut it.
Go ahead.
Sorry. All right.
No, don't worry.
So, so one of the things I then realized, I think I was home and then I had to take a gap year so that I could then go into the next intake. But then I decided, let me just change my degree. Let me study online. I started a business. But while I was here, one of the things that I did is I started a podcast. It was a digital and audio podcast as well. And, visual and audio. And it was called The Middle of Podcast because we're in the middle of life.
Yes,
and
I've watched
that.
Yeah,
and thank you. Yeah. But like that's where I learned. I think what I've been saying now sort of all came together. Okay. One day I woke up and I was just sitting in my room because I had to go through quarantine when I came back. And I sat in my room and I thought, you know, God's brought me so far. I've experienced many highs and lows. You know, I remember even in high school where certain people had certain things and you didn't have those things. And you can tell that I don't have that thing, but also I had, you know, and I went through moments of having a lot and not having much. Even in university, it's always the running joke that, you know, in uni, if you can't eat eggs, if you're allergic, then I don't know how you're going to survive. Because most uni students is bread, eggs, and then you find the rest as you go.
Yeah.
But I went through many moments of even as a family where we had a lot and moments where we had barely anything.
Yeah.
You know, we had moments of extreme highs and lows, you know. But that's where I realized that in life you're always making a decision and a choice, and you're always in the middle of your journey, and that's where the middle of podcast came into play. And
Oh,
I've
that's where the
now
title came. Wow,
the title,
yeah.
so it's called the middle of
Middle
podcast,
of
but it's called
podcast.
essentially it's the middle of. Then it's up to the viewer to leave whatever else they're
Oh, I
going
like
through.
that.
Because
Okay.
during my gap years, I learned that I learned so much from different people.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, from Epworth, what I learned there, from going to church in town, then going to church in Borrowdale, having gone to St. John's for high school, where you know you assume everyone has,
But some
you
people,
sit
things
and
are not
talk to
always
people and you realize
what they seem.
no,
Yeah, they're not always what they seem.
it's really not. I remember a
Yeah.
police officer once stopped me when I was in my uniform in upper six, and as I was driving home, and says, but Mfana, wait. In other words, like you young man, you go to St. John's, so you unemari, you have money. And I remember saying, yaka pay school fees. And he laughed and said, go.
Yeah.
You know, he just laughed and said, go. But
And he was
again,
probably thinking, no, you.
yeah, and he's like,
That-
let him go,
because he
let
goes
him
to St.
go.
John's.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's where I realized that everyone is walking their different journey,
Yeah.
and we can all learn something from each other's
Yes,
journey.
definitely.
If you close off to yourself and you're not willing to share, I think that's the importance of sharing your testimony as a Christian,
Absolutely.
right? Is everyone just sees, you know, you as a Christian, be like, life has always been perfect for her, or she prays, or she seems like,
Yeah,
but
but it may
just
not be.
but no one really knows,
Yeah.
and that's where the importance of sharing comes into place, right? Where they need to understand, like, okay, people have been through different trials and
Yeah.
tribulations, and not everyone's journey is the same, but we can pick up something.
We can.
So it's called the middle off, because in us conversing now,
Mm-hmm.
you know, someone who's watching now is going to pick up something different to someone else.
Exactly.
But we had the same conversation.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's one thing that I started doing. I really got deep into it. You know, I interviewed different people. I had God was so good. It wasn't difficult to get guests on. I did different episodes with people who, used to do, a biochem, and now they're like a graphic designer, right? I worked
Yeah,
with,
amazing.
I interview people who are acting, like they're professional actors and actresses, and one of the people who I interviewed, actually she had won The Voice UK, and she went from, okay, she's singing, now like right now she is like
International.
international,
she's big.
international.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my gosh, like it's so interesting to see people go through their different journeys
Yeah.
and talking to them. And I realized that, in the word, it speaks about how our lives are a living testimony. And I
Absolutely.
think that's one thing I've been learning. And so that was sort of up to then. And then I did I think about 2 years ago, I was into farming, which is like
that versatility, diversity.
Exactly. So I was doing my podcast, but I was also farming, and I had a business that was selling Korean sheet masks, so skincare.
Okay.
So people are like,
Okay.
dude, you're
Wow.
doing digital
Yeah.
stuff, you're doing skincare and farming. How did but I guess that was sort of, I believe in every season God has been teaching me something. And in life, like I said, I just believe that God, we're constantly learning and growing. And as a Christian, I think it's easy to go through certain seasons and especially when you're doing okay.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of coasting
You're just
through.
coasting, yeah.
And you're like, okay, and you read out of, okay, I guess that's what I do. But I've been learning that you have to be more intentional about your journey, your walk with God, because certain things that you're learning in this season will apply to another one. And sometimes what you go through as a Christian, you're not going through it just for yourself, but sometimes you go through
Yeah.
certain things to be able to share with others
share with
as well.
others, yeah.
And I think that's been one of the most interesting things. One of the most rewarding things is hearing people share how their lives with God has changed because of the podcast or conversations we have. And to me, I'm just talking,
Yeah.
And I believe
And you don't know who you're impacting.
No, and like I said, I believe God puts the right people in your life as well.
He does.
Because I had a biking accident when I
Really?
was 9 years, 9 years old.
Okay.
We used to live in Hoggetty Hill. So if you know the place, you know that it's in the name Hill.
It's really,
It's
like,
ups
yeah.
and downs. So the gate was at the top. Our house was in the middle. At the bottom, there's like a stream that ran by, but like lots of trees. So we were big on outdoors as the three boys.
I can imagine.
Very naughty.
Yeah.
Not even naughty. We're just
Adventurous.
I think
maybe.
we're adventurous
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So we'd like play a lot outside, and we had our bicycles. So we'd made like a track within the trees and would play in there. But one day, my parents told us when we moved to this house, guys, you're not allowed to go from the top of the gate down to the house because it's a steep.
It's too steep.
Yeah, and it had a curve. So we're like, cool. But boys being boys, and me being me, would go slightly higher and down. The next day, go higher and down and this was like in August. So until you get to the top. Then that one day in the morning, I went from the top all the way down and I fell, but I scraped my elbow and that was about it.
Ooh, okay. It could have been worse, eh?
It could have been worse. Then later on that day, we went to the neighbors next door. Then we came back home. And when we came back, I was like to my brother, can you please hold my bike? He goes, no. And I was like, fine. If you don't know hold it, it's fine. I'll go down. And I went down. And as I went down, I turned my bike and then it spun. And I was like, oh, this is not good. So I hit the brakes and the back brake failed and the front one worked. So it threw me off. I smashed into a tree. And then that day, the gardener decided to cut the thorn bushes. So I fell into thorns. But I didn't feel anything. I think there was just so much adrenaline. I don't know. I think, thank the Lord,
Yeah, thank God.
I just got down and all I remember is just as I was walking to the bathroom and Auntie was helping me out, my teeth were falling out as I was walking there.
So you must
and
have
blood.
hit your mouth.
I did.
Yeah.
And blood was falling and my parents were not home and they were cold and they had to rush in. And I went to the hospital and it was a whole thing. So for the whole of grade 3, the last part of the last term, my teeth were actually all stitched together.
So you obviously got operated on?
They operated me, but so thankfully my jaw wasn't like broken or anything. But they had to stitch all my teeth so they stay in place. And
How
then
did you eat?
I would have like blended food.
Okay.
I couldn't chew.
That must have been a difficult period for
you. Again, I think I don't remember in terms of the eating process. But I remember that I had certain people who stuck by me. There's this a friend of mine, her name is Munashe. I don't know why she was so nice to me at the time, but she literally from time to time would sit with me at break time in the class.
Wow.
While all the kids, because I couldn't go outside and play either, because my teeth could.
They'll start.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, that's the journey of life, right? Because we were together from grade 1 up to grade 7. High school, she went to her high school. But we met again after high school, and she's now a very good friend of mine. But in the whole process of everything in life, going through that process and period where my teeth were, so I then had dentures. And then I get grade 7 and teeth started growing where my dentures were because not all my teeth had fallen out. But the ones which had didn't grow back. So again, I was pretty insecure. So starting the whole podcast, I think that was a God thing because I was very insecure about my appearance. I was short.
But you can't tell when the podcast is...
Yeah, and you can't tell.
It's like perfect.
People think, oh, you're natural.
Yeah,
and
very
I'm like,
confident.
Do you know how much God has worked in me to do that? Because for me, it was very much I didn't have the confidence. I felt like, even like when I'd meet new people, I was very quiet. Because I was like, okay, if I start talking, people start asking me questions.
They'll ask too much.
And then
get to know too much.
Yeah, and then you get to high school where, like it's a boys' school. Granted, we had girls in 6th form. I had one of my cousins who was there as well, so it kind of felt a bit easier. But it was one of those where it was just like, I don't know. And I was very insecure about my appearance. Like, I was short, like I said. I had like a big gap in my teeth, and I'm quite skinny, and I'm coming from a government school where like my accent is not the same as everyone's accent, and it was all these little things that made me feel insecure. And I had confidence in who God was, but I also believed I was there for a reason, because I remember applying, and the school's not easy to get into if you didn't go to the junior school, and also if you didn't have like siblings who went there. My mom's older brother went there in upper 6, but that was like back in 1996. This was 2010.
Yeah, it's a long
time. So it's like,
ago.
okay, fine. Will I get in or not? And I was one of a few people who didn't have like, siblings, something,
all those
who got
things,
in. Exactly. And I was like, okay, fine. If
That's
I'm
God
in,
for you.
and I remember praying and saying, and my dad he'd left corporate, and their factory had just closed, their clothing factory. So it was this period where it was a bit difficult, tight financially. And, the school says, okay, fine, you've got a week to pay a deposit.
And I'm sure it was
and
a
it was
lot.
like, it was close to 2K.
Oh yeah, that
and
was
it was
a lot.
just a dollar rising. And I was like, so as a boy, but I'm like, no, it's fine. It's going to, and my parents would kind of look at me like, oh, do you understand? Like, and in my head, I'm like, no, God's going to provide.
Yeah, that was
And I remember just praying
Yeah.
and saying, God's going to provide. God's going to provide. God's going to provide. And again, I think my mom has always said I've got this crazy faith that she can't explain.
Yes, it seems
and I was
that
like,
I can see
God's
it.
going to provide.
Yeah.
And he provided.
And he did.
And literally in that week, the money came, was paid.
Wow.
And I was at St. John's the next year. And I think I've seen God provide in many different ways. But like I said, one of the things is friends.
Yeah.
So my best friend throughout high school, he was very outgoing and wanting to make friends. And I was just like,
you were more
I was
withdrawn
more like
and
withdrawn.
stuff, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. I think God the journey of life, right? God orchestrates and puts people in your life.
He does.
Because when I then became friends with him, I then got confidence that I didn't have. So most people would then say, if I got to know you and you're comfortable, I would then be bubbly and energetic. So I was kind of my real self around people who I was comfortable with.
Okay.
But until I was comfortable with you, I was very much like to myself. But as I got to sixth form, lower six, upper six, I then gained a lot of confidence.
That was
so then
good,
the podcast happening, I don't think it would have happened if I didn't get the confidence I got earlier on. Obviously, like I had my teeth done and everything else later on in life, but like I very much got that confidence from the people God placed.
I was going to say the people who you interact with or in your inner circle or around you are very important. And that's one thing that keeps coming out in your testimony.
Wow. So there are people who helped sort of build me and make me who I am. So even the podcast, I was always like, it'd be cool to do that. But one of my friends, her name is Tando, she pushed me. She was like, Mako, you're so good at talking to people. You're so good at this. And you've had this vision for time. Do it. And I was like, I don't have a camera.
Excuses.
I don't have this. You always have an excuse. I don't have a camera. My phone died. So when I was in Malaysia, when they, just before coming back, we were now allowed to like walk around and run during COVID. And I went on a run and I fell and my phone cracked and died. And I was like, I don't have a phone. I don't have this. I think that Christina lady, she actually gave me a phone.
Okay.
But it was old.
So everything was coming into place.
Yeah, everything was coming into place. But I was like, no, it's old, And I had an excuse for not doing it. But so Tando really pushed me and said, Marco, God's given you a gift. And you can't not choose the gift God has given you.
I like the way she said it like
that. She's very, direct. And I was like, sha. I was not trying to hear it, but I knew she was right.
No more excuses.
Exactly. So I made a plan. I then got the podcast started. But I then found that people actually were sharing like, my relationship with God has grown because of this. This has happened because of this. And again, because of then sharing, I now started working with the youth at church.
Oh, wow.
And I now started, I kind of had this confidence because Pastor Gui saying the why matters. Tando saying if God's given you a gift, do it. My mom just like, go do it, bro. My parents are pushing me and I've got friends around me who are supporting me. And it's sort of, I think, has helped me become who God is calling me to be. And one of those things like coincidence-wise is things like I do digital marketing, right? And that started off in uni because the lady says, who's got more than 200 followers? Who's an international student? Who's got more than 300,
so
400,
you ticked
500,
all the boxes.
more than 1,000. And then she goes, okay, fine. Would you like a job? And I was like, I don't know. I thought, actually, I've got some stuff that I'd like to buy.
Yeah.
So yeah, sure, why not? She goes, okay, so I'm not giving you a job, but like, we'll give you like an allowance for carrying out work and stuff. I was like, oh, cool, bet. And I start working, like handling this, not just like the uni students one, but like the university page. And I start posting things and I work with Crafted Media and I learned more about it. And then I just started off as like, then with the youth now. So again, I feel like there's certain things that when you serve under the house of the Lord, I really believe that when you serve in the house of the Lord, everything else will follow.
It will follow.
And some of the things that we do when we're serving God doesn't just mean like in church strictly.
Yeah.
Whenever we obey God's calling, He uses those things without us knowing that He's using them for a later time. Because for me, I then started working with the youth and with this, he was Pastor Gui had now gone center. So there was a new youth pastor called Pastor Kadziyanike, and he then says, Mako, I want you to like run with like social media and just working with the youth. And I'm like,
they could see something.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know what you're seeing, but cool.
Yeah.
And I then start working with them and I'm posting on socials and stuff. But I actually then Tando again says, you should make money out of this. I was like, I can't charge the church.
Monetize on your
She's
talents.
like, no, I'm not asking you to charge the church, but do it for other businesses. And I was like, I don't know. But it actually then became a thing that I did. So when I then applied for my job that I have now, like my corporate job, I then applied. And in my application, I said, because it's a training officer. And one of the things they wanted was someone who's good at creating content. And I then said to them, I've got a podcast and I do digital marketing.
There you
and
go.
For them, they're like, when I then got hired, they're like, that's actually why we hired you. Because of those two things.
Isn't that amazing?
But
wow.
It's things that I got confidence from the friends that God put in my life.
Exactly.
It's things that I got from serving in church and eventually growing it into a business. And that's sort of been me and my journey and just how God constantly orchestrates different things. And I think one of the biggest things that I can always say is to obey. There's a saying that obedience is better than sacrifice.
Yeah.
But also delayed obedience is still disobedience. it's something that I learned.
Delayed obedience is disobedience.
Yeah, it's still
that's
because
interesting.
if
Needs
God
to be
says
immediate.
go now,
Yeah.
and you say, I don't know, then
The
you go
window
an
is
hour
open
later.
then. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So the window of opportunity is only
Open.
so big.
Exactly.
And it's something that I've been learning, that that's something that God also says. And He allows for certain things to happen in your life for you to experience other things. So this farming business, it went well for quite some time, and we're growing and learning many different things. But then it came to an end. And I was really like, oh my gosh, how could it end? And I think that really shook me. Like, I think that shook me in ways that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And even up to now, I'm still like,
still like, what happened?
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I'm now understanding this. But it really changed my perspective on life. But it then helped me realize that when I then got this job that I'm at now, I then realized that I kind of needed that, because I don't think I'd be where I am now without that ending. And I think I've grown in ways that I can't explain
With this new
job, role, new job, but also just my new outlook on life. I don't think I could have gone and been where I am now without having gone through that. And again, to just say that, like, certain things seem like they're bad, but there's a scripture that I absolutely love, which is Romans 8:28, which says, "For all things work together for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose."
Amen. Amen.
And it's amazing that, and it's not to say that, God said this thing needs to end. Because certain things happen in our life and we say, oh God, but certain things just happen.
Yeah.
But God works all things. So even things that were meant to destroy, or things that were meant to, because at the time I was like, okay, what's the point, right? About a lot of things in my life. I was questioning a lot of things. I was questioning, okay, fine, God, what exactly am I then called to do? Because I really believe I'm called to business and to whatever. And it's just that He wants me to carry out business in a different way.
In a different way.
And things like questioning certain, I think at that time I questioned friendship as a whole. I remember saying to my closest friends, like, I don't know if I believe in friendship like that anymore. And he was like, they're like, what do you mean? I was like, no, but I think that then got me to also see that, but God works everything for your good.
He does.
Because then I then realized a lot of things about myself.
Okay.
And I then grew as a person, and then things that seemed like, for me, like I said, were like a whole thing where I was like, this is not going to work out. I don't know, whatever. But then God showed that I've got a plan, and my plan is greater than your plans. And that's always, and I think that's the theme of the whole testimony, is like, from biking accident to being in Epworth and Malaysia and the switch from government school to private school to everything, where it just shows that God was always saying that I work all things for the good of those who love me and are called according to my purpose. And that's why I then say obedience is important, because if we try to live life outside of God's purpose, He then can't necessarily work all things for our good, right? You're kind of
derailing what He's planning for you.
Because He says all things according to for He works all things for the good of those who are called according to His purpose.
Yeah.
So not for the good of, it doesn't end there, to His purpose. So the purpose part, and I think that's something that I'm still, even up to now, constantly asking God, is keep showing me what my purpose is and help me walk in my purpose and help show me what I need to do. I mean, I know I'm like, 25, 26 soon, and it's like, I'm still very young, and I feel like I don't know anything in life, and I'm still learning.
But from what you said, you already picked up a lot of stuff, I think, about life. Yeah. I'm sure you must be mentoring people as well. Yeah. Because you've been mentored by so many, and I'm sure now it's spilling over. So I'm sure there's lots that's coming out of you.
So I think as a result, working with the youth at church, I mean, on a Friday, they're typically like 50 to 70.
Okay.
And then on a Sunday, because we have like a full-on Sunday service, so it's like its own church essentially. They're about they average between 100 to 160.
Okay, it's a big number.
So low Sunday 100, but like fixture free and holidays they reach like 160. And but one thing I've been learning is like, we also need to share.
Yes,
and you don't share because you know everything.
Exactly. It's not about perfection.
I thought pastors know. When someone says, God said, and I'm like, yeah, He knows, or she knows, or, but I realized that God is also working through you. Yeah. And I think many a time we leave sharing the gospel to, that's for the pastors, the elders, that's for this person and that person. Yeah. But everyone is called to be a minister of the word. And
to do their part.
Yeah, and ministering the word doesn't necessarily mean we all need to stand on the pulpit.
Exactly.
But we all share wherever we are. Exactly. And that's an important lesson that I've been learning, that like, you can evangelize and share. The theme at church has been, so last year was Empowered for Mission. and how God has empowered every single person for mission. And in every sphere that you're in, so if you're a teacher, those kids you teach,
Exactly.
that's your mission.
That's your mission.
You know, and you don't have to be a perfect Christian. There's no such thing as a
There's
perfect
there's
Christian.
no perfect
In
Christian.
fact, the perfect Christian is the one who's just trying to be like God. It doesn't mean you are God.
Yeah.
And you don't know everything. And you fall. You will fall.
You will
In the
fall,
word,
yeah.
it even tells us that you'll face many difficult challenges.
You have to get up again.
But you have to get up.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a scripture that says that, you know, the righteous may fall 7 times,
But they get up.
up.
Exactly.
You know, and
Exactly.
and that's just been my life, I think, where in moments where I think like I've been beaten, I'm down, and it's like, no, but no, like,
Get up.
okay, let's go.
Let's
So
go.
you know, it's easy to throw a pity party and be like, woe is me, and it's very comfortable to be no woe is me. I actually think it's comfortable to feel pity upon yourself, because it's a comfortable place to blame. Because when you feel pity upon yourself, you kind of put blame on everyone else and everything else, instead of saying, okay, but God, first of all, looking and saying, what role am I playing, and taking responsibility for your role, but also saying, God, what are you saying about this? What are you saying about where I am? And you know, this year it's been on mission 24/7. So it's that very thing where I think I've been a lot more intentional about, yes, I've got the podcast, and yes, I've, you know, shared youth, and like you said, you know, mentoring people where someone says, Uncle Mako, I've got a question. And you get those, and some questions I'm like, I'm like, listen, this is what I think off the bat, but let me go do some research and get back to you. But something else I've been learning is like, being on mission 24/7 means that we are sharing the word in everything we do. Our lives need to be a living testimony.
Yeah.
So how I talk to the petrol attendant, how I talk to my mom, my grandmother, how I talk to, you know, a stranger, how I drive.
Exactly.
God has been challenging me on that.
Yeah,
eh?
on the roads, especially now with all these roadworks.
Exactly. And it's more so like, for
Like-
me, I get annoyed with people who are not courteous on the road.
Yeah,
And I'm
we've
like,
got a
no,
lot
but-
of those people, hey?
Exactly, but
Yeah,
it's where God has been
that's-
teaching me that, okay, just because he wasn't courteous doesn't mean you need to treat
Bring it
him
back.
or her back.
Yeah, they're like, I'm going to
Just-
teach them a lesson.
Exactly, and it's like, no,
No,
but that's
no.
that's being Christian, and being Christian just means we're trying to be like Christ, we're trying to emulate the life that Christ led, and we are just trying to be the best version, and maybe just like, I don't know if you have anything else that you want me to say, but just, or want me to talk about, but I do just want to say that I've also just been learning that you need to forgive yourself and forgive others.
I like that. Forgive yourself. You can't
yeah.
keep beating yourself up over things.
No.
And other people, you
I
have
think
to.
it's easier to sometimes forgive others than yourself.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah, because other people, you understand, like, they've got other things going on, and you can make excuses for them, or you can actually say, I forgive you, but yourself, you kind of have to understand that you're also trying to grow and learn. And sometimes I think when you're always chasing perfection, it's like, I failed. Okay, now I'm starting again. But I think that's where, like,
You need to be patient with yourself.
Exactly.
And I like that saying that says life is about progress, not perfection.
100%.
That's really what it is.
And recently we went to camp with the youth at church, and it was Pastor Gui who actually we invited, and one of the other pastors, Mafukidze, who came to the youth. And when we were preparing, the elder in charge of the youth actually said to us as the leaders, and said, as much as we're praying for the camp for the youth to, you know, find God and everything, it's also a camp for you as leaders. It's not a youth camp.
I like
it's a
that, yeah.
church camp.
Yes,
It's a camp for those who are seeking God.
Exactly.
And something that stuck by me is salvation is instant, but sanctification is a process. So,
Lifelong, eh?
So
Yeah.
everything we do, as we're on mission, as we live our lives for Christ, as we're doing whatever we're doing, and as we're walking through our journey of life, we receive salvation like this because Christ died on the cross and got rid of everything, right? Like
Amen.
all sin and ailments and everything in terms of the repercussions and everything. But it's a process to become Christ-like. That's where sanctification comes. And sanctification is a process of becoming like Christ. And that is a process. That doesn't happen instantly.
No, it doesn't.
It's
It doesn't.
today I will get it right and tomorrow I won't. I remember when I was trying to, in Form 2, I had a foul mouth. Obviously my parents don't know. I think this is them hearing for the first
This
time.
is going to be a revelation.
But like I would cuss quite a bit because
Is it the people who are around you,
in
do you
high
think?
school, like
Or
everyone is
just-
cussing.
it's
you
like
know?
fashionable.
Yeah, in high school everyone's cussing. Everyone is, you know,
Using bad language.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
throwing it around. But
So what changed? Like,
I don't remember. I think I got conviction while reading the word, and then at youth, one of the pastors like why? But the conviction came from the word, I remember,
Okay.
and God just convicted me. But the reason I say this is because I then realized that I wasn't going to stop like this. I didn't just stop.
it'll get,
I was like, okay,
Less
so,
and less and
like we
less,
said, the
like-
whole backward slang thing.
yeah.
I would then cuss backwards. Right? Because for me, it felt like I'm not
Like
cussing
you're not,
anymore.
but you know-
Like I'm not saying the thing. But
but you know deep down that you
but
are.
you know you are. But
God
you're
knows.
Like, but it was for me. It was like a process. So I was like, okay, fine. Let me not.
Okay.
Or okay, fine. Let me instead of saying that, let me find something else to say. And then slowly, let me actually like stop saying it.
And then
And
you
like
stopped.
I just don't cuss. Like
Okay.
I don't cuss. That's not a thing I do. But it's to say that it's a process, right? And I think in
Did
our
people
journey-
around you notice, or not really?
So one thing
Like your
that's interesting
friends
is
and people.
when I got to after high school, everyone who I've met after high school actually asked me, "Are you a Christian?" And I go, "Why?" They go, "Because you don't cuss."
Oh, because then you see, yeah, that's where the testimony is. Because then if it's going to be conflicting if you do, and you say you're a Christian, they'll be like,
What do you mean?
so which is it? Like,
And literally even getting to Malaysia, people were like, "Why don't you cuss?" And I was like,
because I fear God.
and it's not like I told them
You
I
told
don't
them, yeah,
cuss. They
but
themselves
they
noticed.
noticed.
And they're like, "Why don't you cuss?" Because I'll be around people who are cussing all the time. Because I mean, like, again, you're in the world, but you're not meant to be off the world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And they're all constantly, saying whatever they're saying, and they're like, "How come even when you're frustrated, you don't?"
you just
And
keep
I was
quiet
like,
or
"Oh
something.
no, it's not a thing I do." Why? I was like, "No, just as a Christian, I believe like when you speak and what you say, the words
Yeah.
have power." And they go, "Okay."
Because that would have destroyed your testimony, I think.
Yeah, I
it
think
would.
so for some people, for sure.
some people, yeah.
Because they then would ask me about God because and it would all start with, "You don't cuss."
You don't. Exactly. That's
So
amazing.
sanctification is a process. If you feel like you're not in a good enough a Christian, if you feel like you're not living the right life in the sense that like there's certain things you're working on, remember that it's a process.
It's a process.
And it being a process
Yeah.
doesn't okay the wrong that you're doing, but it's also to say that God has forgiven you and He gives you another chance to have a new lease at life.
And there's hope to improve. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Exactly.
yeah, new day, new mercies.
Yeah,
And that's,
wow.
That's
Amazing.
Yeah, that's me. I don't know.
Do you think you might have a pastoral gift? Because they don't ever ask you that.
All the time.
Oh, really? I didn't know because I'm listening to you and I'm like, is this guy like a pastor? Or
I've got
I
a
didn't
friend
know
called
anyone.
Kombo.
I didn't
I don't know
know
if you know that friend.
my son. Oh, really? I didn't. I was just wondering. I was like, should I ask him?
No,
Because I'm listening. I'm like, this is the stuff pastors. This is the stuff pastors are made of.
we're always laughing with him
Yeah.
because I'm always laughing at that whenever you serve, people just assume that you're a pastor.
Yeah, because of they
And-
listen to you and and they're like, I think
Yeah,
they left out
no,
something. Maybe they
shame.
got a pastoral gift as well.
I don't I now
You don't know.
I won't say I know that I'm called to ministry for sure.
Okay, of some
I
sort.
can 100% say that. I think it's something that God I've always had that feeling since I was young, and not because of my parents, but just myself.
Yourself.
Yeah, just like full on conviction. And I think the older that I get, the more I see it come to pass and to
Okay.
fruition. I mean, even talking to, I guess I'm engaged. I don't know if that's a
Oh,
thing.
congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that when I was initially talking to my golf fiance, is,
Getting used to that.
Yeah, getting used to it. But when we were talking before we started dating, I had to tell her that, listen, I need to let you know that I believe I've got a calling on my life and that God is calling me to ministry. I'm not 100% certain what that's going to look like,
Yeah.
what the finer details are, but you need to know that's part of what we're getting
So it's
into.
like forewarned.
Yeah, no, I was like, listen, I don't want to like a year, 2
You
years
need
into
to say,
dating and
oh.
be like, by the way. And she's like, I didn't sign
Like
up
a
for
light
this.
bulb moment, like it came from nowhere, and yet you knew all along.
Yeah, so I didn't know.
Well,
I
so
don't want
was
people
cool
to
then,
sign up
obviously.
for. And she was like, okay, no, cool. Like, let's do this.
That's one of the
Yeah.
signs that she was the right person.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, yeah.
Other people was asking me, how do you know? And I was like, no, they're like certain things
Yeah,
where.
there's certain indicators.
Yeah, and one of the things I did was I'd really been praying, asking God for a daily planner.
Okay.
I always wanted one. And I'd been praying and saying, okay, God, I want a daily planner. Okay, fine. For my birthday, I'm going to buy it for myself. So this year, before end of year, so my birthday is end of year, 28th September. And interestingly, we actually share a birthday. Just we're a year apart, but we're both born on the same day.
Wow.
Yeah, so for me, I was like, okay.
There's too many
so
things.
the way that I spoke to her, I was like, hey, would you like to go out to celebrate our birthday? That's, trying to ease it in.
Yeah.
But again, it's so that
So-
God orchestrates everything, because when we then met up, I told no one on this entire planet I wanted a daily planner. And she got me a gift. And I was like, oh, I didn't get your gift. I'm so sorry. I thought like me taking you out,
That was
a
the
gift.
gift.
And she
Yeah.
says, no, I wasn't expecting a gift, but I
Yeah.
just thought I'd bring one. And what did she have?
A
She had
daily
John Maxwell daily planner,
Oh.
and my Bible that my dad
Wow,
gifted to me
wow.
when I had just the year that I left for uni
Mm-hmm.
was a John Maxwell Leadership Bible.
Wow, what more
And then
confirmation
she gives
did
me
you
a
need?
John Maxwell daily planner, and I was like,
That's too much.
so
Too many
again,
signs.
it's those things
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
but the whole chance of the pastoral thing, I don't know if I'm called to be a pastor, but I am
In
called to
ministry, at
minister
least,
one
yeah.
way or form.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and of which you're doing.
yeah.
You've
Even in
already begun
uni,
to
I
do.
did it without knowing, because I would serve at their youth every Friday.
Okay.
Every Friday night, I'll be there serving. Then in the evening, like friends will be like, "Oh, we're having a party," so I'll go to the party afterwards. But I was,
Serve
I was
first,
serving,
party
and
later.
even at the party, like
Yeah.
even like how I conducted
Yeah.
myself, people would be like, but you know, there were games like King's Cup where you're drinking and you add. People would play with cards and they were adding different alcohols to a cup, and whoever loses would drink everything.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so
Okay.
like be like mixtures of different drinks in there. And people are like,
Isn't
but
it
how come you never
dangerous?
play this
Sounds
one?
dangerous.
No, it does. But they're like,
Yeah.
how come you never played this game with us? I was like, because like. So, like for me personally, I don't drink, just personal conviction, and it's one of those where they're like, "But why don't you?" And I was like, no, it's just something I don't
Just
do."
something you
So
don't,
for them,
yeah.
they're always like, "You've got strong convictions," and they're like, "But you go to church before you come here." I was like, "No, coming here, we're chilling, we're talking, but I'm not
Socializing.
doing." And they're like, "But you
Yeah.
don't do certain things we're doing," and I was like, "Yeah, no, because
At least they noticed
we
that.
can be together." Because for me, I felt like it was me trying to reach to them and also be like, "Okay, so I'm coming into your space, but when I invite you on a Sunday,"
You must also come.
and some of them actually did
Yeah.
come. So
Yeah.
it was a testimony in itself.
wow.
So yeah.
Wow, Mako, there's so much in your testimony. It's like testimonies within testimonies. So I just want to ask me before wine off, like, because I could see so many themes there. There was intentionality. There's the people surrounding you. Kind of like, I would say, destiny helpers. People God places in your life
sure.
to help you to get you to where you're supposed to, or to help you to become the person that
Yeah.
God is molding you into.
Yeah.
But what would you say, like, to the young people out there? Just parting words, something to
Yeah.
encourage them and, you know, just to give them hope. Maybe some are not in the same place and
Yeah.
they'd like to maybe, you know, to progress. Like I said,
Yeah,
we're not heading
yeah.
for perfection. What can you say, like, as your take-home message?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that, like, I'll probably say focus on whatever the last thing that God said to you. I think sometimes it's easy when you are waiting for I think we're very much in the age where everyone's like, I'm waiting for a word, I'm waiting for what God is. But the last,
prophecy or
exactly,
something.
or I need someone to say something. The last thing that God said to you, focus on that. And until He says something else, do that. I would also say that if you're struggling with your faith, if you're finding it difficult to walk your Christian journey, if you feel like you're not a Christian anymore because of stuff you've done, it's just like, turn to God. There's this album called Lukewarm, Camp Lukewarm. And I think that's such a really good album if you would give it a listen. It talks about how everything that happens in life, but God is just wanting you to be very honest. In the word, it talks about having an honest and contrite heart, right? And it just means that it's someone who just wants God. I remember one time when I was talking to this girl before my fiance, and one thing I said to her was, I just want to know if you want to be with me or not. All the dynamics of will it work, will it not, the ins and outs, that's a whole other story. But do you want to be with me or not? And I kind of feel, and I'm not to then compare their relationships, but I feel that's God. That's God saying, everything else will work out as we walk together, but I just want you to want me. And if you want God, everything else falls into place. As you read your word, God reveals Himself. You know, as you pray, He reveals Himself. He'll give you the right people. I mean, even with the podcast, the community you have is also very important. With the podcast, there's a guest that I'd invited who mentioned that, they would like some makeup done and stuff like that. And I was thinking, okay, I don't really have money right now. I just started my business. I don't have anything. And I had friends who were based in the UK, who were here in Zim, in different places, who said, okay, tell us how much you need and what you need. We're sending you money because we believe in what you're doing. And my channel at the time didn't even have like 100 subscribers, I think. But they're like, we believe in what you're doing, believe God has called you something. So have a good community, be someone who is honestly just seeking God. And God will bring the right people to you. Just, I would say, seek God. Even when you fall and you falter, just keep your gaze on God. And everything else falls into place. It sounds easier said than done. But that's probably the best thing I can say is keep your gaze on God.
And we've got Him, God Himself, to help
100.
you, because He won't ask you to do something that He's not going to help you to do.
100%.
Yeah. And you're talking of your podcast. Is it fine if I'm going to share the link? I think it'll be great for people to have a look at that.
Yeah.
And whatever else, at the end of the video, we'll put up some stuff there so that people can go back and listen. I hope you've got plans for more for more podcasts.
Maybe a disclaimer. I did I realized that I did over. I did so many
It's quite a
episodes.
lot.
I didn't realize
It's quite a
until I
lot.
went back to look at it recently. But the last year I haven't released anything just because I think like I've been in this
Busy.
Yeah, I've been in this season where I've been very busy and making excuses that I'm busy. But I am going to restart it soon. I may do something slightly different because the podcast is very much me talking to different people on their journeys. But I'm
Yeah.
going to be a lot more intentional about it being Christ-centered in everything that I do.
Wonderful.
So yeah, there's going to be new content coming.
Oh, we can't
but
wait.
please feel free to share,
Yeah,
and I hope
I will
people
do that. Yeah,
benefit.
I'll definitely share that.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Mako, for
Thank
joining
you very
me.
much for having
It's been
me.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
It's interesting being on the other side of
You're the one. You're the interviewee.
yeah, I'm the interviewee, and it's like, oh, okay.
Now
But
you know what it
it's been
feels
lovely.
like.
I do now. Now I really do. But
Yeah, but
I really
yeah.
appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No,
and,
you're welcome. You're
Looking
welcome.
forward to more content.
Yes,
And
yes.
yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
What remains for me is to say thank you so much for staying to the end. And thanks for watching. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Have a wonderful week.
Cheers.
Bye.